Hello everyone and welcome in. This is week 3. Tommy John Seed here again. I'm Tommy. I'm John. And here's our little cat Stevens. And today we're here with our geranium, our beautiful indoor houseplant, which we're moving outside soon. And today is our first episode in which we will be showing you how to start a garden outside. We've been in our seed laboratory for the last couple of weeks, and now we're gonna move it outdoors. Yeah, it's nice and warm out there today. So for this video, we're gonna do things a little differently. We're gonna have 3 separate video clips because we aren't gonna do it all in one cut this time. But the topics we'll be covering today are hardening off of your plants. So what you want to do with the plants that you start in your basement or wherever you're starting your seeds before you actually plant them in the ground. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the section devoted to it. And then we'll have 2 more videos, one on transplanting plants and the other on starting from seed in your new beds. And then I guess a 4th topic we should do too is sod removal. We've been busting up a lot of sod to plant our garden.
All right.
Yep, so we'll be back from outside.
Back shortly.
So our first section here is going to be on what we call hardening off of your plants. And so here I have a beautiful tomato plant here. This is an heirloom tomato plant that we started from seed down in our basement. And so it's getting warm outside, and I just have brought it outside for the first time. And you'd think it's ready to go in the ground because it's warm enough. It seems to be past the last frost, but there's a few steps you want to take before you actually put it in the ground, and that is called hardening off. So hardening off is a way to get your plant acclimated to the conditions outside before you actually plant it. And so things like sunlight, wind, temperature variations in night and day, those conditions are not present when the plant is growing inside. So you've got to get it kind of moderated outside in a slightly neutral environment outdoors. So what we've created here is what we would call a hot frame, and this is covered on all the sides. It's about an 8-foot by 2-foot hot frame, covered on all sides by row covers. But you could also use things like plastic bags even would work over the top. Something that you can moderate the temperature in, that's going to keep your plants out of direct sunlight during the heat of the day, and out of the wind as well is important. And so for the first few days this guy is outside, you're going to put him in here with all your other plants. So your really warm weather plants can go in here. So yeah, we've got peppers and some zucchini down in there, some cucumbers in here. Here's a cuke. But these are all kinds of plants that are not quite ready to go on the ground until it warms up a little more and they have hardened off. And we have also created a second kind of hardening off situation. Dad, do you have anything else to say about hardening off while we're walking over there?
You want to let the plants harden off for several days. 3 or 4 days is really good. The frame we had over there really gets a lot of
Yeah, we'll flip this around here for a minute. But the frame we have over there really gets a lot of sun and warmth, so it can be more suitable for tomatoes and warm weather crops like cucumbers, squash, peppers, eggplant, that kind of thing. The one over here is probably slightly cooler. We've got it in the shade.
So you can see our compost pile, our garden over here a little bit, and then underneath this big tree over here, we've built another kind of cold frame over here as opposed to a hot frame. And this is good for hardening off and keeping other plants that are better in cooler weather. So we've got our brassicas under here. Brassicas are the family of broccoli, originally wild mustard, and all brassicas descended from wild mustard. So that's broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts. And yeah, so collard greens, exactly, mustard greens. And so we've got all our brassicas up in here, you can see, and these are ready to go on the ground. They're kind of anxious to go on the ground probably. And then we've got some lettuce over here as well. This is red iceberg lettuce, which is ready to go in as well. But you can just see.
How did we make the sides? How did we make the sides of this?
So you can see nothing is waste here in Iowa, and we have some great sod. So you can see the sides of this thing are actually just made out of sod. And the sod is really great insulation. From the outside, it keeps the temperature nice and regulated in there. And then we've covered it with a piece of row cover, old row cover for the top. So the same kind of thing as the hot frame over there. So yeah, that is kind of the basic idea. Here's the rest of our sod pile, in case you're interested. But like I said, nothing is waste. You want to use the old materials to do useful things for your plants. So that's.
We'll be taking with the sod pile, raking it up a little bit more and covering it with wood chips basically, and doing a sort of warmer compost on the whole thing. Cover it with wood chips. We've had a little bit of experience with that last year. It had great results. We dug into it a little later and found basically black gold. That is our plan for most of the sod. Some of the sod will also be used to replace patches in the lawn.
Yep. So yeah, sod is a great resource to have. It'll turn into nice black soil for your next year of planting. Yep, so this has been our section on hardening off. We'll come back with some transplanting after this. All right, folks, so we're back over here by our little sod house, and we've picked out which plants from there we want to put in the ground today. So we've got an assorted tray of brassicas there, and they're all kind of mixed together. We've got some Brussels sprouts, some kale, and some broccoli in there, and some cauliflower too. So it's actually all mixed together. We're not really sure which is which, but that's okay because they can all go in the same bed together. The brassicas family stays together. So what we're gonna do first, we're gonna walk you through this whole process. We're gonna take you all the way from what is our current lawn into turning it into a nice 4x4 bed for all of those brassicas. So you can see here, I think,
An existing
4x4
bed. We actually have some little Swiss chard that's coming up that we had put in as seeds. We're going to use this bed essentially just as a frame of reference to build the next.
So as my dad was saying, we're going to use that existing Swiss chard bed, which is a nice 4x4 that used to be lawn less than 3 weeks ago, as our frame of reference, and come off with about a space of 2 feet in between it and our next bed. And then we're going to show you a time lapse. We're going to do a time lapse of us removing the sod off of this area of the bed of the lawn to plant our next 4x4 patch of brassicas. So yeah, we'll be silent for a couple minutes doing our time lapse and digging away here in Iowa. So our first attempt at that time lapse failed for multiple reasons. One, my phone stopped taking the footage. I think it ran out of storage. And the second reason being that we actually hit the dog line that we just put out here to keep our beagle out of our garden. But you can see we didn't realize that the time lapse had stopped, so we actually did finish the bed. So that's what we're going for, but we're gonna try another time lapse. We're gonna dig another bed 2 feet to the right here in our yard. So yeah, we're gonna be making this patch of grass now garden as well. And it's amazing just how quickly, that only took about 10 minutes to make that one. So it's amazing just how quickly you can turn your lawn into garden. We'll show you here with another try at this time lapse. Hopefully it works this time.
Let it go, wide and clean. Round and round, cuddle the plow for a field. These and drown, the bushels of corn with the barley meal. Broken ground, open and beckoning to the spring. Black dirt living in.
All right, so as you can see, that time lapse was a little more successful, and we've got our nice 4x4 bed here now. My dad is just putting the finishing touches on it, but I'll explain a little bit of the process of what you just saw first. Basically, we went around the edges with square shovel here and my dad's other rounded edge shovel over there, and we cut this 4x4 square into a nice even divisions, 4 parts, and then you can cut it even smaller than that, and it makes it really easy. You just break through the sod a little bit at a time, and then you can just pop the sod right off, and you're turning your lawn into local food in about 10 minutes or less. If it could take a little longer than that too, but yeah, you see it's pretty easy. Nice brown soil here and just about ready for planting. Now my dad is putting his finishing touches on it. My dad was a landscaper for years, so he has some comments he'd like to add here about the finishing touches.
Well, I think what Tommy said about raking, it's kind of amazing what just a simple leaf rake will do in terms of adding a lot of precision to your edges, make things look nice. One of the things with your soil, a lot of times it'll get kind of compacted on your turf the longer you leave it on there. You keep walking over it and so forth. By the way, we do try to, once we have our bed, and even when we're making it, we try to walk the least we can on the bed. But when you walk around the bed and you've got that dirt there, it'll get compacted on your lawn, and the cure for that is the leaf rake. So just take your leaf rake. A couple other things. You smooth this out, kind of can go in multiple directions like this. You've got really big clumps, you can chop those up further. And then I like to take the rake and turn it upside down and give this smoothing effect on the top, and you really can get where it has become a very nice bed.
And you can see this is a guy who's got about 35 years of lawn tool experience under his belt, and so he's a trusted expert here on the subject. We'll be right back. We're about to plant some stuff. So we said we were going to plant our assorted brassica mix here, but upon expert advice from my mother Carolyn, who was also a gardener ever since she was a little girl, we decided to plant these kale instead because they're a little bigger, and we've been having some trouble with rabbits around here recently, and we want to make sure that we have that the plants are big enough to defend themselves from those rabbits. Our cat has been doing a good job in defense, but yeah, so planting those kale are getting ready to go in this rich Iowa soil here. You can see it's just wriggling with life. There's earthworms in a lot of places. You pretty much just have to dig up a handful, and of course when I say that I can't find one, but you see them everywhere. There's some life right there, but yep. So today we're going to be working with a method of gardening developed in the 1970s by a guy named Mel Bartholomew, and he was an expert gardener. His method was called square foot gardening. So we've gone into a 4x4 square here. The idea with square foot gardening, if you know much about geometry, my dad was a math professor, and so he loves this. The maximum volume or area you're going to get out of a space is with a square rather than with straight rows. So you're actually increasing the amount you're able to plant here. Now, you actually may know that if you planted it in a circle, you may be able to get some more area out of it, but that's a little more difficult. So Mel Bartholomew developed square foot gardening. The basic idea here is my dad is doing it with a 4x4 plot. You will subdivide it into 16 square feet. As you can see, he's doing very carefully. And in each of those plots, you will put a certain number of plants depending on what plant it is. So for these kale in particular, since they're pretty big, they will grow up to be about 3 to 4 feet tall and take up the entire square foot. We will just plant 1 kale per square foot.
But for things like radishes, you can plant 9 per square foot. Carrots, you can plant 16 per square foot. And so it depends on the plant. It's easy to do a simple Google and see how many of what you're planting is good for each square. Now, this is a super method for gardening at home. My dad is just about to plant the first kale here in this square foot. I'll help him out. You can see he's using a screwdriver, and I'll dig a little hole for him here in the soil. Our soil is so nice that you can kind of just dig a hole with your hand, and now he's got that plant.
You can use a shovel for tougher soils, and you can also chop down a little bit.
Good home for plants.
All right, we lift. We don't want to bury leaves. Lift and tuck. Use our hands and our fingertips. Firm the plant in. Not too hard, not too soft. And there is a kale plant.
And you can see it.
Now you want to, for watering, you want to go ahead, and this is kind of obvious, but you want to plant the whole bed first and then water, because you don't want to be creating sort of mud for yourself. Not really mud per se, but more mess for yourself unnecessarily. We have a rain coming, so we're actually not even going to water, because we'll let Mother Nature take care of that.
Now, one thing that I forgot to mention earlier when we were talking about hardening off is when you're putting your plants outside, whether you're putting them in the soil or just moving them outside, there can be a factor called shock, and that is when the plants are getting used to new conditions. And so that a common one is transplant shock. And so a good way to combat that is to give the roots some water, or make sure you're planting right before a rain. Another one obviously is the sun shock. So if you're transplanting right before dark, as the sun's going down, that's the best time to transplant.
The hardening off can condition plants to essentially the elements, as in real sunshine, wind, and dryness, wetness, and any of your just outdoor environmental conditions. You can almost think of it like your plants have been kind of babied for a while when you've taken care of them inside. So the hardening off period is sort of a transition. It is a transition. And so what happens, just real quickly, like if you didn't harden off? Well, there are many things, but one your plants may still survive, but one example that's common is sun scald. So the plant will actually get almost a burnt look to it, and they may or may not survive that. But by hardening off, you're giving them the sort of a transition.
Yep. And yeah, you can think of those plants that are hardening off as kind of in between that youth and adult phase, and so they're going through puberty, and as teenagers sometimes do, they will show some emotions, and so it's normal. They may show some wilting or some scald, like my dad said, but they will grow up to be great plants. So we're gonna finish planting this 16 foot, then we'll come back and end the video up. So thanks for tuning along so far. Stay tuned. Welcome back. I'm on the ground here, and as you can see, we've got our 16 kale plants in there. They're teenagers now, but they're just about to take off and turn into full adults. So as my friend Maddie McCabe would always say, kale, yeah, we've got some good food growing there. And we hope, the goal here with square foot gardening, one of the greatest advantages of it is when you've got plants packed in this tightly like we do, and they're taking full advantage of that space, they will actually provide a sort of living mulch over the entire soil there. So they'll prevent weeds from coming up, and they'll keep the moisture down on the soil. So that's a great advantage of square foot gardening as well. Dad, any other comments?
Sometimes when you're planting these seedlings, especially if you haven't anticipated it, you may find multiple seedlings in a little cell, and we encountered that here. So what you can do with that is soak that cell for a couple minutes, and then tease the plants apart carefully and give them a chance. So the two we have are right here. These were actually two in a pot, And you see that one doesn't look so good right now, but one of the great things about gardening is a lot of times just a little bit of patience and time and some rain and sunshine, and we'll see that plant pick right back up. So
yeah,
don't be discouraged if you have a plant like that, and you just need to be persistent too. So
yep. And that's one of the great things about gardening. Like my dad said, there's a lot of great things about gardening. You get your own food, save a lot of money, and you're taking care of the earth. So in this video, we tried to show you a little bit of how you're gonna create your own garden and foodscape outside in your lawn, turn your lawn into food in less than an hour if you do it right. And so this is a great thing to do. It's been such a joyous experience for us, and we hope that we can help you along the way. So after this clip, there will be one more video which shows a clip from the past. Actually, earlier today we were planting green beans and potatoes over at our other garden across town at Farmhouse, and so there will be a demonstration there of how you plant seeds in rows. So that's a little different than what we were doing here at the Square Foot Gardening. But yep, please check that out, and we'll be back again next week. Thanks for tuning in.
thanks for watching.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Hey folks, planting some bush beans here on a beautiful day in Iowa, Grinnell, Iowa. We're probably about 67 degrees here. We have 67 degrees and a light breeze, partly cloudy, just wonderful weather. You can see over there our dogs hanging out.
Yeah, I'm here too, folks. It's a beautiful spring Sunday. You can see we wanted to include this in our video for tonight because we planted a lot of bush beans here in this row, and wanted to show you how we can start some stuff from seed. So in this row we've done 2 rows of bush beans, one right here, and then there's one over on this end,
which is already planted.
Yep.
So we're going to show you how we covered and firmed up the soil here. Notice we have a slight raised situation here, raised bed.
Yeah, you can see the mounds in the ditch there.
Even up the middle, it's kind of interesting. We may be able to show you some photos, but up the middle there's actually a row of potatoes. Potatoes and beans tend to grow really well together.
And the reason for that being potatoes grow deep and beans grow right at the surface, obviously, and beans are legumes, so they pump nitrogen back into the soil for the potatoes.
So what we're going to do to make some efficiency here, but it's not just about efficiency, you actually get good function. We're going to cover the furrow just from one side, since we have the furrow a little deep, and you want your beans down about 1 inch, and this is a little deep, so we're going to just cover from one side. And it doesn't hurt to have a little impression there to collect some rain, which we understand is coming tomorrow. That's another good tip, is to plant right before the rain. So you see at this point I'm just covering the seeds and essentially covering from one side of the furrow. Tommy, maybe you could show him the tool that we made the furrow with. It's over there.
Yep, so we just use a little diamond point hoe here. I guess it's more like a triangle than a diamond, but yeah, there's the hoe we used. And you just go very lightly with the tip. You can almost even see the line there. He only went about 1 inch deep to make that furrow. And every seed is gonna, see if I can turn around. Every seed is kind of gonna have a different depth you want to plant it at, and also a different spacing. So for beans, we did about 3 to 4 inches between each seed, and a depth of about 1/2 inch to 1 inch. But yeah, make sure you look it up on Google. And with things like companion planting, like we did with the potatoes and the beans here, there's lots of good companion plants that'll save space and be really good for each other, growing next to each other. So make sure you give that a Google as well.
So one step as you finish up, now if you're not going to get rain for a while, your final step, you want to water your seeds in real good. But you know, letting Mother Nature do that is wonderful. You know, keeping track of the forecasts and planting a day before a rain, or you know, so you want to get contact on your seeds. This is a similar hoe to what Tommy just had. This is actually called a Warren hoe, and one way to get contact, you just want to press a little bit. So much in gardening, almost almost universal principle is moderation. Not too much, not too little. So you don't want to jam it down, and you also some really cool motorbikes going by. So anyway, you don't want to like jam it down, but you also don't want to like just leave it and do nothing. What can happen is you can get a lot of improvement in your germination if you get what we call contact, which means good contact between the soil, the seed, and even rain will do that. Rain will improve the contact. Now let me show you something a little more efficient. So that's one way for a short space, and you can be kind of inventive with your tools.
You can even just use your hands if you want.
You could use your hands.
Yeah, for both of these things, you don't have to have any rakes or anything, but the contact is very important. Obviously, seeds and plants love soil, and so you just want to make sure they're up against each other there.
So this is often called a garden rake. It's harder steel than a leaf rake, and it's very good for doing something like what we're about to do here, getting the contact. I'm a big fan of the leaf rake for many things though. So I will tell you this, when we're smoothing a bed and when you're trying to get stuff out of the grass, get your edges nice, you'd be surprised. Many of us, we start using a leaf rake and we sort of feel like we're not getting anywhere. Practice with it and you'll see that it's the tool for the job. But back to this, this is what we're gonna do. This guy, actually, if you look at it, has quite an angle to it. So I want whatever I'm tamping with to be kind of going straight down. So you notice I'm holding it at an angle. A lot of you are going to have a tool that has more of a perpendicular, so you can just go straight down. But that's the reason for the angle here, because of the particular tool I have. And you notice I can make a lot more headway because of course I have length here. So here we go, just going along and kind of looking at that little place where we had our furrow, and we're tamping him down.
Yep. I think that is. We'll be back with some other stuff. This has been our soil tamping tutorial.